The Gnostic nature of Christ. What is the Gnostic understanding of the nature of Christ? Well, according to some texts from the Hammadi library, Jesus as our nature. Furthermore, they will say of him that he is unbegotten, though he has been begotten, that he does not eat, even though he eats, that he does not drink, even though he drinks, that he is uncircumcised, though he has been circumcised, that he is unfleshly, though he has come in the flesh, that he did not come to suffer, though he came to suffering, that he did not rise from the dead, though he arose from the dead. This is the text known as it's just called the text of Melchizedek or Melchizedek, however it's pronounced. And this is from the Hammadi library or the Hammadi scriptures. So here the Melchizedek or Melchizedek text or testimony or gospel, we don't really know what it really is because the title's missing. I'd like to think it's either a testimony or a gospel. Well, this text from the Hammadi library is teaching the standard Christian doctrine that Jesus has come in the flesh, that he came to suffer, and that he arose from the dead. Next we move on to the Gospel of Thomas. In saying 28, Jesus said, I stood in the midst of the world, I came to them in the flesh, I found all of them drunk, I found not one of them to be thirsty. My soul was saddened by the sons of men, for they are mentally blind. They do not see that they have come into the world empty, and they will go out of the world empty. But now they are drunk. When they sober up, they will repent. So we're at the very start of this saying. Jesus is quite clearly saying that he came in the flesh, but what type of flesh was this? So Jesus came in the flesh, but what type of flesh was this? If we look at another saying from the Gospel of Thomas, this is explained in saying 101. Those who do not hate their father and mother as I do cannot be my students, and those who do not love their father and mother as I do cannot be my students. For my mother gave me falsehood, but my true mother gave me life. Jesus' birth mother could only give him falsehood or death. By this we understand it to mean that Jesus inherited our sinful nature or Adamitic condemnation from his mother Mary. The Gospel of Philip, speaking about Jesus' resurrection, the Master was conceived, that is, born again from what is imperishable through God. The Master rose from the dead, but he did not come into being as he was. Rather, his body was completely perfect. It was of flesh, and this flesh was true flesh. Our flesh is not true flesh, but only an image of the true. So Jesus came in the flesh, which even after his resurrection, his body is still flesh, but completely perfect. Our flesh is not true flesh, but only an image of the true. This is because of our sinful nature, which Jesus himself would have had before his resurrection in order for him to go through suffering and to truly come in the flesh. Had he been of an immaculate nature, then that would not be truly coming in the flesh. Again, Jesus at the Jordan. Jesus revealed himself at the Jordan River as the fullness of the kingdom of heaven. The one conceived before all was conceived again, that is, born again. The one anointed before was anointed again. The one redeemed others. The one redeemed in turn redeemed others. Jesus needed to be redeemed himself because he had our sinful nature. This is the Gospel of Philip. The Bible also teaches that Jesus had our sinful nature and that Jesus himself needed to be saved. Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 5. Who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with strong crying and tears unto him who was able to save him out of death, and was heard in that he feared. So at one time death had dominion over Christ. Romans chapter 6 and verse 9, knowing that Christ, having been raised from the dead, dies no more, death no longer had dominion over him. For the death that he died to sin once for all, but the life that he lives to God. Immortalization is the physical cleansing. Romans chapter 8 and verse 3, for what the law could not do in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh. The apostle says God made him to be sin for us who knew no sin, 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 12, and this he explains in another place by saying that he sent his Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh, in the offering of his body once. Sin could not have been condemned in the body of Jesus if it had not existed there. His body was as unclean as the bodies of those for whom he died, for he was born of a woman, and not one can bring a clean body out of a defiled body. For that, says Jesus himself, which is born of the flesh is flesh. John chapter 3 and verse 6.